Hello, everyone. Welcome to How to Succeed During a Pandemic. Hi, I'm your host, Wendy Lally, and I'm delighted to welcome you today. Today is the first show of a new version of a show we've been doing since August. We were doing How to Succeed in Business During the Pandemic, and we've broadened the focus of that show to this one, which is How to Succeed during a Pandemic. And it stretches beyond business. Today, I have three guests with me who have been on the show before. They are all tremendously successful in their business, which is the reason that I interviewed them for the previous show, because the purpose of that show was to show how people are not only managing to survive during this pandemic, but some of them are actually thriving. And the hope is that by sharing their insights with others, they'll help more people to do the same. So one of the things that all these three people have in common, which I do too, is that we're all very, very good at networking. And they happen to head up their own networking groups. So I asked them to all come today and to talk about that aspect of their life, because it's what's getting a lot of people through this very, very difficult time. CJ Jelinek heads up a group called Business by Referral. And he also has a series of events that he runs called Northside Networking. Mike Rataj is not only our producer and kind of my co-partner in all of this, and he has a group called Bold Brain Trust. And then last but not least is Kevin Crowell, who is the head of BNI, which is another group I am a member of and talk about quite a bit. So now what I'd like to do is introduce all these young fellows and have them talk to you about their networking experience. We'll start off with Mike. Mike, I'm so thrilled to be able to talk with you about this, which is a favorite subject of us both.
Thank you. Yeah, and actually, I was trying to think about how I got started networking. And I think you were one of the first few people that I met at Cup of Joe. So when I started my business, I was leaving the financial industry to this creative industry, and I needed an entirely new network of people. And I didn't know how to get clients because before I was just cold calling people. So I found on Facebook that there was a networking group near the house. So I showed up. And then that led to SBAC, and then that led to BBR. And then after, I think, 2 years of networking, I tried to do my own group through SBAC, but they wanted like, a lot of regimented stuff. So I was like, you know what, let me just start something in a neighborhood, by my neighborhood at a restaurant so I can support the neighborhood and just start my own group. And it's grown from, I think it was the second coldest day last year, whenever the polar vortex was, that was like our first meeting. And then it's grown, we're 10 to 15 people, I think, every other week, and feel like we're a strong group. How we do it differently, I was always a fan of the last 10 minutes of networking, where everybody focused on problems and used really the collective group to solve problems. And that's what I wanted Brain Trust to be about. So we do like one sentence intros, and then we spend 45 minutes solving things instead of, intros and whatnot. So yeah, so thanks for having me here. I'm excited to hear everyone else's story.
Mike's group is like a conversation among friends, but the friends who are really focused on helping you with whatever business problem that you've got at the moment. And it's so encouraging and helpful. And I hope it continues forever.
Thank you. Thanks for being a member. It's hard. You don't know, as entrepreneurs, you don't have a lot of resources. So it's nice to pool together 10 heads and get a solution to your problems. So right. Thanks for being a member.
Sometimes we complain about our spouses, but mostly not. So
we're pretty good.
I'd like to now introduce CJ Jelinek. And CJ, would you tell us about Northside Networking for one, and also BBR, which is another great group?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having us all back again. I know we've been previous guests on your show, so thank you very much for having us again. And I think it would only be appropriate, given this is a discussion about networking, if I started with my networking pitch and put myself on the spot. So what I normally say is, hi, I'm CJ Jelinek from Jelinek Solutions, and I build and promote affordable websites for small to medium businesses and nonprofits. I do that every week, as you said, at BBR, Business by Referrals. That's a group that started back in 2009, which is also around the same time as when I started my own business. I incorporated my business in 2008. There was a recession back then. I had hit the streets and network. And so my very first experience networking was actually, I'm up in Rogers Park, and there, at the time, there used to be something called Biz Arts. And it was a networking group that met, I believe, monthly. And I went, there were about 40 people. It was fantastic. At the time, I had my baby strapped to my chest, because that was my only option at that time. I met somebody, Marty Becklenberg. He said, hey, we've got this new group that we just started up a little while ago. Why don't you join us tomorrow morning, every Thursday? So that's what I did. I went, and this was back in 2009, when there were a handful of people. It grew over the weeks and months, and we got so big, we got kicked out of Panera Bread down on Clybourne Street when it used to be there. And we eventually found our way to Ann Sather in Lakeview, and we meet every single week, bright and early, Thursdays, 7:15. That's non-COVID times, when we're meeting in person, of course. But the format's not unlike a BNI. It's a member-based group. We give our pitches, we give any referrals, thank yous, there's member presentations, and so on. And so that's my member-based group that I run. With regard to Northside Networking, I found that member-based groups are great. That's your consistent networking. But events are a different style of networking. Events are usually where there are no restrictions for categories, one per category, that type of thing. It might be a one-time event, it might be a recurring event, but I was a little frustrated with how I always had to go downtown for a good structured networking event at that time. And I said, wait, there's plenty of people up here on the north side. Why don't we get together? So that's what I did. I founded it with another gentleman, and we approached the Rogers Park Business Alliance. One thing led to another. We ended up putting on the events. It expanded to multiple chambers, and now we're in several different chambers up on the north side. And currently, I, of course, give the virtual presentation in terms of the networking event, but the format of that is a little bit different. It's structured, and it's B2B structured networking. So what we do is we break up into small groups, facilitator-led groups, and you give your pitch around that table or the breakout room if it's virtual. And we keep doing that over and over and over again with fresh faces each round. And then there's open networking and a raffle and chamber, presentations, good stuff like that. So those are the two different types of networking that I run and lead. But I also love participating in other networking events and groups as well. So thanks again for having me, Wendy.
Oh, you're welcome. I'd love to have you come to the BNI. And with that, I'm going to introduce Kevin.
Thank you, Wendy. So I really feel like I'm sitting among some real networking geniuses here. I have such great respect for Wendy and her networking capabilities. And both of you are light years ahead of me. So really, I feel like I'm not worthy. But let me take a page out of CJ's book and start off with my own elevator speech, at least part of it that I use at BNI. My name is Kevin Crowell. I'm a residential real estate agent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services in Oak Park. But what I really am is a change agent, because I work with my clients to help them change their real estate portfolio to match the changes in their lives. And I do this very profitably, 99.5% of the time. I keep a scorecard so that I know how whether I'm being as effective as possible for my clients. So that's the way I start off my networking activities at BNI. Actually, real estate is my second career. My first career was in bilateral U.S.-Japan trade and development. Literally what I did was I worked with U.S. firms to primarily electronics firms to get them started in business in Japan. I did everything on this side of the pond and also on the other side of the pond to get them up and running, and also did the same for Japanese companies coming this way. When I turned 60, I realized that, this can't go on forever. I've got over 1.5 million miles on United, and it's not getting any easier. So I thought, maybe I should stick a little closer to home. It might be nice having clients closer than, half a world away. So I became a real estate agent. I've always had a deep love and affection for architecture, which is why I moved to Oak Park in the first place. That really, for me, it was very exciting, but I realized very quickly into that it's a very different sales proposition than B2B. So in my prior work, it's all business to business, it's product focused, but I call real estate P2P, person to person. And I had to learn a whole new way of promoting myself and my services. And that led me to referral-based marketing. Long story short, that's what my association with BNI. And it's been something that's become very, very near and dear to myself. And as Wendy said, it's almost become a new religion for me.
As you can see, each of these fellows started at networking and got into networking in different ways. And I want to really dive into, because although it seems like we have forever, because we've gone from 15 minutes to a half an hour, actually we don't. And I want to get into a real discussion about networking itself, not only for us and our experience with it, but for other people. And I want to ask you, what advice would you give to someone who is starting out networking? How do they make the most of networking opportunities? We have different examples right here. One with BNI, it's a paid group, business by referrals. There is some cost, but it's not like structured like BNI is. And Mike, you just kind of walk in the door. So every group operates a little bit differently, but I want to ask all of you really the same question. How can people take the most advantage of, one, a networking event, and two, an ongoing networking group?
Sure. Wendy, I hope it's okay if I go first. To me, what's so important is finding the right fit. When I was doing B2B work, I knew all of the guys out there. I'd gone to a Zig Ziglar seminar, a Tony Robbins seminar. When I became a real estate agent, I went to a Brian Buffini seminar, listened to Tom Ferry podcast. The names start going up. Nothing stuck. I hated the kind of salesy approach that Tony Robbins had and Zig Ziglar had. And Buffini and Ferry weren't resonating with me either. And I stumbled into a BNI meeting. And in BNI, as you well know, their focus is on giver's gain, which essentially is the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's not a religion, but it's a way of thinking. So essentially, at BNI, what we do is we work very hard to help you grow your business, knowing that in the future, if an opportunity for you to say, introduce someone who has a real estate need to me, that you're going to do that. It's what you and I, Wendy, call altruistic self-interest, right? And to me,
the end of that phrase is do unto others as you would have them do unto you, only do it So you're not
Yep.
not waiting for the gift before you give it.
Right, right. So for me, that really resonated, and it said something very important to me. It stuck with me in that way. So what I would say to people who are looking to start doing more networking is go to school, try out all of these guys. BNI might not be right for you. It's right for me. It might not be right for another person. And find out what it is that resonates with you, and then stick with it.
I think that's great advice. And all of these groups, by the way, you're meeting the same people, and that may seem pointless to some people who don't really know how to network. It isn't at all. You have to get to know someone before you trust someone. When you trust them, then you can recommend them to other people. And that's where the money is made, is in those recommendations.
Correct.
So, and I want to say one other thing about BNI. You may go to one BNI and there's a feeling about it you don't like, and you go to another one and you feel like you're home. Each one has a different culture and a just different mystique about it. So don't give up if you don't meet the right group the first time out. Now I want to get Mike and CJ involved in this. So guys, what would your advice be? And I'd like you to also comment on following up. So people will meet people, but they won't necessarily continue to meet them.
Yeah, well, I want to add on to what Kevin was saying in terms of finding the group that's right for you, because there are a million different styles of groups, 3 different ones represented here alone. Find a group and attend events. Again, those are 2 different things. You're still accomplishing the same goals, but find a group that fits you and attend events. And my advice for going to events is go with a buddy. Take a buddy. It's a heck of a lot easier to go if you're with somebody, because then the nerves aren't as, bubbling up as much. But you can also play off of each other. Oh, hey, I'd like to introduce you to my friend so-and-so. And these are conversation starters. So, and vice versa, they introduce you. And so it helps you to branch out and meet people rather than be a wallflower. So that's another tip, is don't be the wallflower. It's very easy to be comfortable. Networking is about getting out of your comfort zone and forming those relationships. And that only happens if you get out there and you do something. So find a group that fits you and take a buddy. But most importantly, I think, Wendy, what you were hitting on is when you go to an event or a group, when you're exchanging cards, don't just take the card, say thank you, and then go home and, toss it or put it back on somewhere where you never look at it. Follow up, follow up, follow up. So connect on LinkedIn, give them a call. Now that Zoom is popular and everybody's pretty much doing it, try to get a Zoom meeting with them. Following up is critical. It's more important than the first meeting to begin with, because without the follow-up, then a meeting is just one-time meeting and you forget each other. So following up is critical.
And I would also like to suggest that if you meet, for example, when I met Mike, I thought he asked to network with me fairly soon. I think it was really the second meeting or maybe even the first meeting. And I'm thinking, but he's another writer. Why would I want to meet with him? And thank God I disregarded that first feeling, because I thought, well, why not? I mean, he was nice enough to ask me, sure, I'll meet with him. And it turned out, yes, we were both writers, but we do very different things. And we have a number of different insurance people within our BNI, and yet they're constantly helping each other. So don't assume that just because you're in the same industry or supposedly competing with someone, they're not someone that you should develop a relationship with, because that just isn't true. And Mike, I want to get your take on our first meeting, because
well, you were very gracious, and before I lose the thought that CJ was letting on with following up, I think when I first was going to networking events, I thought I had to sell everybody. Like that's a terrible way to approach a networking event. Like when I did them in the financial industry, CME group, they'd have, some trading events, and it was everyone just talking about big trades and just random stuff. There was no collaboration. And so I thought it was just a sales event. And then once I realized people are actually trying to help and you're building coworkers versus people you're going to sell, that totally changed everything, because then there's no stress, because then you're not trying to close anyone in that first conversation. You're just building a relationship. And so I think that's the biggest thing I got to say. So when you think of it not as sales, then when you're following up with someone, you're not saying like, hey, did you check out my insurance policy? Are you signing up today? You're actually having a conversation. You're letting things go. So that really helped me, because I didn't have a buddy to take. So I went by myself, and I was scared to death to walk into Cup of Joe. I didn't know anybody. There was 30 people. And I'm like, I guess we start selling, huh? And then you just meet people. So I think if you chill, you see what happens. You see who the leader is in the group, who's the talkative ones. And as Kevin touched on, I started, like, I didn't have money when I started, but if I did, I would have bought from people right away. I think if you start doing that as a networker and you start buying from people, like it's the BNI theory, you're just going to get so much more trust, because it's like, oh, he's opening up his wallet or she. So that would be the other thing I say. Our first meeting, I thought you were very gracious, and same thing. I think it was you, me, and Brad. We were similar, but I think that was where I realized that it wasn't all about the initial sale and we're building something. So, but that was so long. I mean, that was 3 years ago. It took us 2 years to do a show. Things take time. It takes so much time.
Yeah, and I think you put your finger on something very important, Mike, and that is building credibility. And the reason why I tell you what I'm doing in my elevator speech is so that you know what services I provide. At some point, hopefully, we'll be able to do some business together, so that you then begin to understand how I work. Maybe you pass a referral to me, and you see how I handle that client. And it's that process of gaining credibility that takes a long time. And it's only after you have that visibility and then credibility that you move into profitability, right?
And the BNI thing too, it's, by the way, BNI does a lot of education of people. And even though I've been networking for more years than I'd like to think about, I'm constantly learning. But the feeling is that the people within the group are your sales force. They're the ones that are contacting customers for you, because everyone that they meet and do business with is a potential customer for you if they have a need for what you do. Now, why would someone recommend me in the BNI? Well, they've met me, they've heard me speak every week, and they've used my services, or may have used my services, or know people within the group who've used my services. So it's all about, like Mike said, it's about establishing relationships.
Yeah, and the best way to establish that relationship, or one of the ways that you could fail right off the bat, as we've already said, is trying to sell. The way to establish the relationship is to learn about the other person. And the way that you learn about somebody is to ask and not take up most of the time talking about yourself, but ask about them. That's sort of the golden rule that I say is borrowed from, the JFK asked not what you can do for your country can do for you, but you can do for your country. How can I help you? Right? Don't go to a networking event or a group thinking, okay, how can this person help me? Think, how can I help this person? Because if I help them in a roundabout way, it's eventually going to come back to you.
It will.
It will come back. It might take a little bit of time, but that's what relationship building is about. It takes time. And you can't do that when you just talk about you right off the bat. Nobody likes that. So that's something.
And nobody likes to be sold. So when I know, when somebody starts selling to me, I immediately put on the brakes and say, okay, enough, don't need that. and unfortunately, I don't give them the real attention that they probably deserve. They're just approaching it the wrong way.
I've been in one-on-one meetings with people, the proverbial cup of coffee. And I've been in one or two meetings where over, let's say it's an hour span, at about the 50-minute mark, after them talking for 50 minutes, they finally say, "Oh, but I never asked about you. What do you do?" And they give me 5-10 minutes. And at that point, you realize, this is probably not the person that I want to network with and build a relationship with. So don't be that person, is basically what we're saying. Be the outgoing person, and it'll come back to you eventually.
I haven't tried this myself, but I'm just thinking, I don't know why this popped in my head in this course of discussion, but it did. A great salesperson who I met, he said his technique was to take a client to lunch and then just tell them, you know what, I don't want to talk about business. I'm so just worn out. What I want to talk about is, how's your wife and kids? What do they do? What are they like? What's your life like? And this is someone he's trying to get business from. And he said within 5 minutes, we are talking, not only are we talking about business, but we're talking specifically about what I can do to help his business. Because it lowers the resistance. And then you get into who this person really is and what they're really like. So that there's
and what their needs are. Yeah. And what their needs are. Mm-hmm. Very true.
Yeah, that's genius, Wendy. That's just getting it right out of the way and just saying, we're not doing business. Tell me about you. That's like the most settling thing you can hear from somebody.
So there's oftentimes opportunities in the places where you least expect it.
That's very true.
We're going to close on that, because that's very true and something that we all should keep in mind. And one other thing, and I learned this from a BNI podcast, you never know, the guy you're speaking to may in fact be the favorite cousin of the CEO that you want to be hired by. So just keep meeting people and developing those relationships. Speaking of which, I want to thank all of you, because you're not only business contacts and networking contacts, but I regard all of you as friends. And I'm just thrilled that you could join me in our first show, and hope to have you back again at different points. So thank you.
You as well.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
I've got to wrap up. So I just want to wish all of you a successful January. We'll be back next week with another discussion of interesting things that are happening during our life in this era of COVID-19. Until then, please stay in and stay well. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.